Welcome to our weekly Ask the Fund Manager series. The premise is simple. We put a fund manager on the spot and we ask them questions about current events and how these events impact on investment markets. We aim to keep it interesting and understandable and do this all in under 5 minutes. We hope you enjoy.
As we record this, it's probably over 37 degrees Celsius outside. You might be able to tell by just looking at our foreheads with a film of sweat. But the reality is that heat waves, extreme heat, are becoming more common in the UK and Europe. And people are trying to find solutions to that problem. And one of those solutions has been air conditioning. Thinking back a few years, no one really had air conditioning. But it seems now that if you were to log on to John Lewis or B&Q, they're all sold out. You'd be very lucky to find an aircon unit. So, Dean, can you tell us a bit more about how this sort of use of air conditioning has changed in recent years and why?
Sure. Thanks, Tom. I think the key point really is that cooling is shifting from something that's been seen as a luxury to something much more like essential infrastructure, given the temperatures that we're having to withstand. So around 4 million UK homes now have air conditioning, and that's roughly double the level of just 3 years ago. So that's being driven, as you mentioned, by hotter summers, actually more working from home, and also the fact that many UK homes simply weren't designed for sustained high temperatures. Clearly, though, it's not just the UK. The IEA, and effectively they're the gold standard for global energy data, they project that 10 new air conditioning units will be sold every single second for the next 30 years. That's not just you and your Amazon orders, but it's also fueled by higher living standards worldwide alongside those higher global temperatures. So the air conditioning boom is really a visible sign of a longer term shift in the global climate.
That is a few crazy stats that you've just gone through there. The sheer demand for air conditioning unit increase is insane. And you're right, I did manage to pick one up pre them all selling out. Very, very lucky. But one thing that keeps me up at night, if it's not the heat, is maybe the cost of running them. So when you're kind of looking at really hot periods and you might have them on for 9 hours a day, the cost can be anywhere from £16 to £42 per week, depending on whether it's a built-in aircon unit or a portable unit. So not an astronomical expense, but it's something that's a manageable expense, but it's definitely just another bill that gets added on to the numerous bills that people are contending with at the moment. So that's sort of the economic impact for the individual. But let's take a step back. What's the wider economic impact for energy demands?
Yeah, so energy demand, as you can imagine, increases dramatically. They're pretty energy intensive pieces of kit. So daily power demand over the sort of past heat waves rises around 14%, and electricity prices increased to 2 or 3 times their usual levels during heat wave periods. You also need to think about the recursive impact on climate change. More energy consumption means more carbon emitted, means higher temperatures.
I wonder what the demand will be greater for aircon or AI. Maybe that's a topic for another day. But other than energy demands, what are the other perhaps less thought about economic impacts of heat waves?
Sure. So the UN's Secretary General, he was speaking at a conference on climate action this month, and he captured the mood quite nicely when he said London isn't just calling, it's cooking. And his comment wasn't just about London. His wider point is that climate disasters are becoming more frequent, more destructive, and more costly. So I've got 3 impacts for you to think about. The first is that heat waves reduce productivity. I'm sure not for you, Tom, but for others. A single day of extreme heat can reduce national economic output by roughly the equivalent of half a day's of strikes. So you just need to think about the impact of closing schools and the need for at least one parent to take annual leave. Second, you've got an inflation impact. So heat waves damage crops, they reduce yields and push up food prices. There was a drought in Spain in 2023, and that contributed to record olive oil prices, while we've actually had previous Ask the Fund Manager and bite-sized sessions on the cocoa market, where you've seen prices there surge over over 280% at one point since 2024. And this is due to West Africa being in a region with prolonged drought and erratic rainfall. And that's where about sort of 70% of the world's cocoa is produced. The third thing to think about is the insurance and infrastructure implications. So roads melting, railway tracks buckling, and I think a few people aren't in the office today thanks to that. Power grids can fail and buildings can suffer damage. So in the UK, there was a heat wave in 2022 that led to 23,000 subsidence claims and around £219 million of insurance payouts.
Okay, so here's the final question. It's a difficult one. We know that heat waves are becoming a bit more frequent. We know they're probably going to, well, they're expected also to get hotter. So what's the solution, Dean? How do we deal with that?
Yeah, the short version is adaptation, but actually that's quite a complex thing to make happen. We need to make our homes, businesses, and infrastructure just more resilient before the heat arrives. We need cooling solutions in homes, hospitals, and care settings, and we need buildings that are thoughtfully designed to reduce the need for mechanical cooling in the first place. So I live in a Victorian home, and that was built during a period where we didn't have heat waves quite like this. So perhaps we need to be taking inspiration from our friends on the continent. Then for infrastructure, we need stronger power grids, roads, railways, and runways that can withstand higher temperatures.
Okay, so the takeaway, extreme heat waves is starting to become more commonplace. But the interesting thing is it's not just theoretical, but there are real world economic impacts now from that change in climate. So interesting stuff. And I guess the other takeaway is when the aircon units come back and sale again, let me know, because I wouldn't mind purchasing a second one just to double up for the next heat wave whenever that one comes. Dean, thanks so much for your time today. And of course, thank you everyone for watching, and we'll be back again next week with another topic that's caught our eye.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we hope you listen in again next week. Also, we love to get feedback and ideas for future episodes. You can use the link provided below to share your thoughts. Before you go, just some important information to be aware of. Unless otherwise stated, any opinions expressed are those of Aviva Investors. You should not be viewing this as an indication of any guarantee of return from an investment managed by Aviva Investors, nor as personal advice of any nature. Information contained herein has been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but have not been independently verified by Aviva Investors and is not guaranteed to be accurate. Past performance is not a guide to the future. This material is not a recommendation to sell or purchase any investment. The value of any investment and any income from it may go up as well as down, and the investor may not get back the original amount invested. Nothing in this material, including any reference to specific securities, asset classes, and financial markets, is intended to or should be considered as advice or recommendations of any nature.